Hello and welcome. This is the Zen community of Oregon, making the teachings of the Buddha Dharma accessible to support your practice. New episodes air every week.
One of the things that qualifies someone to sit in this seat is they have confidence in this practice. And I was just reflecting that this practice has helped me a lot in many hard times in my life. Rockiest times inside, outside. It's helped me be able to show up and not collapse when people near me were really going through it. It's helped me with existential crises. It's helped me with sickness. And it's definitely helped me with the spiritual dilemmas of being human. And in a way, that's a thread that's going to run through what I'm going to talk about tonight. I want to read a poem first and then move on to commenting on this particular, what's called a sutra, which is a Buddhist scripture that we're studying right now. So first the poem. This poem's by someone named, I think it's Rashani Rea. Some people know this poet. This is called The Unbroken. She says, "There is a brokenness out of which comes the unbroken. A shatteredness out of which blooms the unshatterable. There is a sorrow beyond all grief which leads to joy, and a fragility out of whose depths strength emerges. There is a hollow space too vast for words, through which we pass with each loss, out of whose darkness we are sanctioned into being. There is a cry deeper than all sound, whose serrated edges cut the heart, as we break open to the place inside which is unbreakable and whole, while learning to sing." The unbroken. So then, let me read the sections from this sutra that my talk is going to riff on and be in conversation with. This is from a sutra called The 8 Realizations of Great Beings. This is the 4th and the 5th realization. So the 4th realization says, "Indolence leads to degradation." Do people know this word indolence? It's not really super common in our language. Indolence doesn't quite mean laziness. It means something like a non-attending to something that needs to be attended to, or a kind of absence of tending. Indolence leads to degradation of the mind. "Always practice with diligence. Vanquish all vexations." It sounds so heroic, like slaying a dragon. But that's what it says. "Vanquish all vexations, subdue all confusion and temptation." That sounds a little heavy, but that's what it says. "And escape the prison of the skandhas and realms." Skandhas are the constituents of body-mind when they bind you. They're skandhas, they're heaps, they're aggregates of problematicness. Escape the prison of the skandhas and realms. Okay. And the 5th realization says, "Ignorance leads to birth and death." In some sense, this is saying, not knowing the truth of reality, we fluctuate in states of suffering. We continually oscillate in and out of different modes of being at the mercy of life, right, rather than sovereign in it. Ignorance leads to birth and death. Bodhisattvas are always mindful. So a bodhisattva is a practitioner who wishes to awaken, knowing the interdependence of all beings. Bodhisattvas are always mindful to study and learn extensively, to increase their wisdom and perfect their eloquence, so they can teach and enlighten all beings and impart great joy to all. In other words, practitioners seek to learn not just for themselves. Practitioners seek to mature, not so they can say, I'm really mature, but so they can share themselves in a beneficial way. So that's the sutra, and then I hope what I say has something to do with that. But here's what came to mind. So the first thing is the world according to Buddhism. The thinking that underlies Buddhist practice is that the world arises in tandem with your mind. So there's not just a lump out there called the reality after the election. There's not just a lump out there called Portland. There's not a lump, a thing called Heart of Wisdom Temple, apart from your experience of it. It arises along with your vantage point. Right? It's a little bit of a, I don't know, it can seem like a philosophical game to say, you only experience what you experience, and everything is experience. But actually, you've only experienced what you've experienced, and there's only experience. And you can never be separated from an experience. You're always there. You're always there. When something happens, you're always there. Every time something has happened, you have been there. Without exception. And because you're there every time something happens, what happens has something to do with how you're there. There are no lumps of dead inert matter. There's not some thing called Portland. There's not some thing called the Zen community of Oregon that you can say, there's that Zen community of Oregon, as if you have some absolute object that exists independent of you. You're always there when you say Zen community of Oregon. You're always there. You've never not been there when you've experienced Zen community of Oregon. Or your wife, or your dog, or your president-to-be. You've never not been there. So according to Buddhism, another way to say this is the world is appearance. It's not thing, it's appearance. And appearance arises in the key of our heart-mind. I'm using like the musical metaphor of a key. Right? You can play a melody in a major key. Feels very different than playing it in a minor key. So appearance arises in the key of our heart-mind. The teachings say that when in the key of awakened awareness, when in the key of deep, thoroughgoing practice, this world is perfect beyond understanding. That means it's a perfection that you can't rationalize. You can't describe to somebody why it's perfect. If you can describe to somebody why it's perfect, they can argue and say, no, that's exactly why it's not perfect. This is perfection beyond understanding. According to Buddhism, the world arises in the key of habitual consciousness. It appears as broken into hardly defined self and other. There's us as a place of knowing, and there's those things that we know, and those really seem ultimately distinct. And it's prison-like because of that. The prison of the aggregates. And what we tend to see is greed, anger, and ignorance. When the world arises in the key of not knowing, the key of a mind not certain or fixated in advance on what things are, appearance is exactly appearance. Sometimes teachers express this as things are as they are. That phrase is pointing to something that has of great import. That's not, things are as they are. That's not what's meant by things are as they are. And so we're in a situation in which what we experience, the world that we get, it's neither independent of our minds, nor is it utterly separate from our minds. We can all agree there's a place called Portland. What is Portland? You have a different experience than everybody else. And everything is like this. So this sutra, this first section, it says, indolence leads to degradation. To me, this is pointing to, is it entropy? Does entropy mean that things fall apart without maintenance? I don't know. Are there any? Yes. Yes, basically. Is that close? Yeah. Indolence leads to degradation in Buddhism means we resort to habitual negative dualistic consciousness in any moment that we forget the practice. It means that the general default state for human beings is one of something's not quite right, is one of confusion. And so in a way, we start practice, and we practice long enough, we come to this place where we realize there really aren't any days off spiritually. There are no vacations dharmically. To maintain a mind that does not fall into resentment, negativity, pessimism, it takes ongoing work. Because the default is something is wrong and someone else is to blame. To maintain clarity, to maintain love, to maintain all the beautiful things that we all wish other people would maintain, it is, I could use the language of struggle. To stay alive and free spiritually is an ongoing struggle. There are no vacation days. I mean, you can take a vacation, right? But when you come back to the work, you're like, oh, that's what happens when I take a vacation, right? We could say psycho-emotional wellness can be recognized as a kind of struggle. You always have to work at it. It's not just that you have to do your dental hygiene and your exercise routine and eat good stuff. Isn't it also work physically, psychically? You have to work to keep your state from not degrading. Right? It seems like some people have to work harder than others. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe they've just done the work such that it is now habitual and it doesn't look so hard. In a way, the habit has become character. Right? Just like when you meet someone who's done a certain craft for a long time that you know takes a lot of effort and it's really a lot of skill. It looks so easy for them. It's just that they've done it for so long, it doesn't look like a struggle anymore. Or it's not a struggle, it's become character. Anyways. So mind-heart doesn't tend to hang out in neutral. Heart-mind, mind-heart, those things in the Dharma teachings really are one. It doesn't tend to hang out in neutral. It's pushed. It's pulled. There's a way in which it's tidal with our environment. It's tidal with our biorhythms. It's also entangled. It's not separate from any context you find yourself in. You're not a little capsule that has a wall around you. There's nowhere that that's true, actually. There's nowhere that you can escape embeddedness in the greater field of the tides of heart-mind. So we could say to be a practitioner is to be committed to maintaining integrity, dignity, and brightness of mind. And one is always exerting the energy that it takes to keep that from degrading, from entropy being what it is. Okay? So many of us are quick to hand over the power of our mind state to external circumstances. There are some shitty external circumstances. I mean, that's an understatement. Right? And there are many different iterations of that for many different beings. It doesn't serve anybody to hand over power to those circumstances. Right? And this practice is empowering us not to do that. So this is a reminder. Indolence leads to degradation. Right? The path there's a progression that I think tends to be true. And that is, for some time, it's a struggle. It's a struggle not only to do the practice, like on a daily basis, right? To come to your pillow and do the formal practice, but it's a struggle to remember that you are ultimately sovereign over your mind in your day-to-day life. We continually give our power over to the bus being late, or the weather being bad, or the boss being or whatever, or we give it over to political circumstances, which I'm saying it's a struggle. It's a challenge not to do that. I haven't mastered that. Right? It's a struggle to not indulge negativity. It's a struggle to not be fractured in time, to always be caught up in what happened and what might happen. That way that we get psychically our minds are sort of rent. They lose their unity because they get pulled apart in those two directions, the past and the future. There's a saying in Rinzai Zen that I don't think anybody likes. I could still not say it. I could stop now, but I'm going to say it. Because it's just a metaphor. And the saying is, the first 10 years of practice are hard. The second 10 years of practice are even harder. After 20 years, it's really good. It's something like that. And what it means is you meet your own mind. And if you haven't done any work on your own mind, and if you haven't taken responsibility for your own mind, you're confronted with your own mind. And you have to marshal a lot of energy to meet your own mind. It continually gives over its sovereignty. Continually. This meal made me unhappy. What? I don't know. Part of the way I was parented is anytime I was like, wow. And sometimes I had good reason to be upset. My mom would say, well, it could be a lot worse. Check out such and such a place. Right? I use that. That helps me at times. So handing over sovereignty means we all have the capacity to just let appearance be appearance. It's just a cold omelet. It's just a grumpy boss. Now, as the intensity of life gets higher, to apply that does get more and more challenging. Right? Right? It's just a bout of food poisoning. It's just the loss of a loved one. Just not meaning minimizing, but it is what it is. It is what it is. It's the naked fact of life. We give over our sovereignty when we say, I don't want the naked fact of life. And I'm going to let my mind kind of do what it does over that. Yeah. So there's struggle for some time. And part of the struggle is just remembering that, another way to put this is remembering that you are, your native state is freedom. That's how the Zen masters put it. They said things like, it's really weird that people are free, but they act like they're not. They said that in so many ways. They said that, they said that really quizzically, like it's really weird that people are so free, and they give that away continually. That's coming from their own experience. So it's a struggle to remember that we have this sovereignty. It's a struggle to trust it. And it is a struggle to maintain that in a world that not so many people are all that interested in being sovereign over their own minds. Sovereign is not code for control. So there's a time of struggle, or maybe it's seasonal. Maybe there's cycles. These days I don't experience struggle. So maybe it'll come back. Maybe it is a stage. Not sure. Then there's discipline, right? Where the commitment to being sovereign, commitment to intimacy with what is, becomes part of the skeleton of our life. And that's kind of a relief, because it's your skeleton now. It's not a struggle so much as it's holding you up. Your skeleton right now is holding you up. You don't have to do anything about it. Right? So indolence, the letting the heart mind degrade into the negativity, giving away sovereignty. There's some bones that we have, in a way, we have won them through our struggle. We've done enough practice. We've made enough relationship with community of practice. We've marinated our consciousness in these ways of seeing and being that another saying is that the Dharma gets in your bones. I think a more pleasing saying from a tradition is it takes 5 years to get the Dharma in your bones. That's a little bit more encouraging than the Rinzai Zen thing. The 5 years means if you practice steadily for 5 years, it will really start to permeate you, and it becomes a part of who you are. And it will be on your side even in difficult times. It will be on your side even without a struggle to bring it to mind. If you continue, you get past even discipline. Right? You start to love the fact that you are free. I like to call it devotion. You become devoted to your own not suffering. This is an interesting thing. Everybody really loves themselves. It's quite evident if you observe anybody in your life that they do their current best version of going towards happiness consistently. And sometimes from where we're sitting, that looks a little twisted how they're doing it. And you're like, no, you probably could do it better. There's a more direct route. Sometimes we're right about that. Sometimes we're actually not as clear as we think we are. But we are very devoted to our own. We love ourselves. It's innate. We really deeply care that we don't suffer. Right? And so the devotional stage of practice counteracts indolence because we're cutting to the root. We're doing something that plugs us into a bright source of well-being on a regular basis. We're plugging right into it. Yeah. And then you don't have to worry so much about indolence. It becomes a natural way of being. It becomes almost play. So, this sutra is reminding us, these lines, that the mind tends to default to negativity. Check that out. Check out if that's true for you, and then know that you can respond to that. So one of the next lines in the sutra is, vanquish all vexations, subdue all confusion and temptation. I think that rings for us with a kind of heavy-handed Judeo-Christian thing, like temptation. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but you could think, sometimes I'm tempted just to totally, even though I know my life is more blessed materially, socially, than 98% of the human beings that have ever lived on this planet, I'm tempted to just throw a pity party. I'm tempted to just indulge in my life sucks and here's why. I'm not getting what I want. There's a time for that. I want to make the disclaimer. There's a time for kvetching with the right person. But we don't believe in catharsis as Zen Buddhists. Right? There's not like a little capsule of kvetch in you, like a little bucket of complaint that you could ever empty. You can't empty it. The more you do it, the more it fills up. So subduing the temptation for the sake of sovereignty. I think one of the best practices is gratitude. A number of people who normally come on Wednesday night are at the gratitude retreat up at Great Bow. I'm going to go up actually tonight. Spend a day in that session. I did that meditation retreat themed on gratitude. How many times did I do it? I did it 17 times or something like that. Yeah. And what I learned is that, and I didn't like learning this, right? I didn't like learning that I had the power to turn my mind towards the positive, towards what is abundant. Anytime I could remember, I had that power. And I didn't like it at first, but then I started to delight in the fact that I could celebrate even the basic things of existence. And that wasn't like some, Portland gift shop greeting card kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Celebrate the abundance. It's a real yoga. It's a real technology of mind transformation. It vanquishes a lot of vexations. To take the time to dwell on what is working. The sheer amount of things that are working. All of the beautiful, interesting, or even just basically sustaining things that are in your life that could be gone. That somebody doesn't have. Right? And you just start to turn your mind towards it as a practice. So I really like the form of thank you. I discovered that is I kind of like that there's a little bit of an animistic quality to it. Right? Thank you, mug. Thank you, raindrops. Thank you, funny cat video. Thank you, Trader Joe's. Can we get just a big thank you for Trader Joe's? Just think about all the time Trader Joe's has saved us. All the flavors that Joe has brought into our lives. And you just start to think like, you let yourself luxuriate. It's opulent. You get opulent with gratitude for the things in your life that the mind is just coasting over continually, just taken for granted. Yeah, you do that for 5 minutes, so what? You do that for a week, a month, a year. You do that every night with your partner in bed. You do that each morning. You wake up for 6 months. You will definitely see a change in your consciousness. Because indolence leads to degradation. It's a weird thing. Why is the most human beings' basic state of mind dissatisfaction? I don't know if that was true before, the Industrial Revolution or capitalism, all that. I like to blame capitalism for everything. But if that was the case, why do indigenous cultures have these practices? There must be a reason why they had them. There must be a reason why they needed to orient towards reverence. Probably predates capitalism. I think I've already made this suggestion, but I want to suggest investigating the mind that complains. Not because you're bad for complaining, but because it drains your energy. Again, sometimes we are complaining, and what we're doing is we're wanting to be seen in our pain. We have a need to be met and validated in the difficulties that we have. But at what point does that cross over into a use of energy that just brings you and everybody else down? That begins to take on a life of its own and kind of weave a way of seeing that is it's its own key. Right? Appearance arises in the key of the heart mind. When the world arises in the key of the complaining mind, you get the world that arises in the key of complaining mind. So I really have worked at this over the years. It helps. My experience at living with Chosen and Jogen for years is I almost never heard them complain. They really embodied it, even when I would sometimes find out from the other one that one of them was going through something really serious with their health, like a lot of pain, but they would not let themselves complain about it. Not Stoicism, necessarily. I'm actually not really educated on Stoicism. I hear that Stoicism is cool now. I had someone at home kind of went, I don't know about that. So you could consider taking that on as a practice, especially as it gets cloudy here in Portland. We love to bitch about the weather, even though most of us chose to live here. A lot of us came here from somewhere else. We start complaining about the weather and whatever else. The bourgeois dukkha. But even when you are treated unjustly, does complaining actually serve you? Does that further your cause of being treated with respect? Right? Coming back into dignity? Right? You're unhappy with the political situation. How effective is complaining? How much energy do we lose? So this sutra says, vanquish all vexations, subdue all confusion and temptation, and escape the prison of the skandhas and realms. And so we're asking, what makes them a prison? What is going on when we feel imprisoned by life? That's an interesting texture to encounter. I had a time of chronic illness in my life. Before practice, I definitely felt imprisoned. I didn't know that appearance arose in the key of heart-mind. I didn't know. I had not been introduced into the sovereignty of presence. Right? But here you are, sitting zazen, encountering the teachings. To one degree or another, you are being introduced to that. The prison of the skandhas and the realms, what makes them a prison? That's really the question. In that moment, if you can remember. In other words, if you have a moment of suffering, what makes it so? What's your stance? What's the key of heart-mind? Right? Because it could be otherwise. It really could be otherwise. Sutra says, study and learn extensively. This is what bodhisattvas do to increase their wisdom, perfect their eloquence so they can teach and enlighten all beings and impart great joy to all. This means it really benefits others when we demonstrate sovereignty. It really benefits others when you feel the tenor of the conversation of the gathering is sliding over into complaint, and you skillfully and creatively bring up the positive, bring up the abundant, bring up the clear. Whether that's humor or that kind of those Aikido moves where you're focus, you just turn the conversation. Maybe you don't engage. Maybe this is just one example. Another way to phrase this is, how do we use our pain rather than being used by it? Pain is non-negotiable in this life. Everybody here knows that by now. Non-negotiable. More is coming. I promise. I'm sorry. How do we use our pain rather than being used by it? Why does sometimes pain deepen empathy for ourselves and for other beings and sometimes make us bitter? What's the factor there? The bodhisattva mind is something like, what kind of world do you want there to be? Be that world. Be that world.
Thank you for listening to the Zen Community of Oregon podcast, and thank you for your practice. New episodes air every week. Please consider making a donation at zendust.org. Your support supports us.